if you drink Diet Coke while eating food, because you're not getting the sugar you're promised, your body then wants to store fat more because it's sort of down on the deal. So you'll actually retain, your insulin levels will go up, you'll retain more of the carbohydrate and fats out of the food. So those people who think, I'm having a Big Mac, I better have a Diet Coke, bad move. The trouble is that when we talk about the experience of tasting, people often just focus on liking. Just, do you like the food? As if that's the only question. And then, we jazz it up with a little bit of brain science by saying, when we like foods, that's activation in the nucleus accumbens, which is a sort of pleasure center in the brain. So if you're eating something you like, get a lot of pleasure. So maybe that's what motivates you to eat, or maybe that's what motivates you to eat more than you know you should. That's not the whole story. This is Kent Berridge, and Kent Berridge is responsible for some really wonderful science in this area. And he was the first to really insist on the distinction between wanting and liking. Now, we sometimes talk as though they're the same thing, but they're not. Not only are they not the same thing, they're also governed or regulated in the brain by different areas. So wanting is, as Kent will say, the motivational force behind seeking out and eating food. Wanting is going to get something, you want to have it. Liking is the momentary hedonic response or pleasure you're having while eating. And the secret behind a lot of the things that are wrong in the food system and in the food industry at the moment is they don't target liking as much as they target wanting. Their desire is to get you to want the food. And the trouble is, these two things sometimes come apart. Now, wanting is driven by the dopamine system, and we're going to explain what dopamine does. You'll hear a lot of people, even people who should know better, nutritionists and others, who talk about, dopamine is the pleasure drug. When you get a rise of this hormone, when you get a rise of this neurotransmitter dopamine, it's because you're having a pleasurable experience. That's not right. In the context of eating, dopamine increases when you see or smell or hear something that predicts getting what you like. So for those of you who were at Carl Friston's session yesterday talking about predictive coding, this is prediction. Dopamine rises when it attaches to that thing which predicts getting what you want. Here's a way to distinguish wanting and liking in a very intuitive way. None of us liked either alcohol or coffee the first time we tasted it. We didn't. So why did we drink it? Well, maybe we thought it was cool and the adults and grown-ups were doing it. We thought we'd persevere. But what happens is you didn't like the taste. What you liked was the post-ingestive effect. You liked that caffeine rush once you'd had the coffee. You liked the alcohol making you feel relaxed and warm and a little bit more at ease. And then you start to like those things that predict that reward. So you start to like that bitter taste of coffee. You start to like that bitter taste of alcohol. So it'll get to you eventually. So dopamine attaches to things that predict getting something that you like. So they should be umbilically connected. When it all goes right, individuals will want what will deliver the goals that give them what they like. That's when things go right. Doesn't always go that way. Now in addiction, these things come apart. So as I say, dopamine is spiked by what predicts pleasure. The look of a dish, you say, oh, that looks delicious. Your dopamine rises because you're expecting how it'll taste. Even hearing the sounds of food. When you're hungry, as you might be getting in a little while because it's getting near lunchtime, your sense of smell will give you a reduced threshold, more sensitivity to food odors when you're hungry, and it'll go back up when you're sated. So if you wander around and you smell food cooking, you'll start to think, oh, your dopamine levels will go up. I want to have something to eat. So when things go wrong, what happens? Let's start with the case of addiction. So with addiction, think of, class A drugs. People take them, they like the hit. They take them again, they like the hit. They take it a third time and the hit's not as high. So they up the dose. Oh, we're back there. But if they keep doing that, the liking and the pleasure will go down and down until the point comes where they're not even enjoying what happens, but they can't stop wanting to do it. For the alcoholic, the most dangerous thing is not the taste of alcohol. The most dangerous thing is the sound of a cheery pub. Hearing people clinking glasses, because that was predicting having a good time, having something you wanted. It's hard to turn off the wanting, even when the liking goes right down. And food companies target wanting. Now they can do that in the following way. I wonder how many of you use artificial sweeteners in your tea or coffee. Well, if you put in artificial sweeteners, your sensory system, your taste receptors will say, oh, I'm getting sugar, lovely, very happy. But the trouble is, after a while, when the body doesn't get the sugar it was promised, it'll go on wanting to have a bit more. So when you've got foods, which the government are very happy to say, oh, we'll ask the food companies to reduce the sugar in their foods. So they put in artificial sweeteners. And people then think, okay, I'm getting the sweetness, I'm enjoying it. But the sensors in your mouth, your taste receptors tell you I'm getting sweetness, but the brain is not bluffed. After a while, it doesn't get what it was expecting. And so then it will crave more because it will try to replace that. Also, just to put you out of your misery, those of you who drink Diet Coke, because you think that's great, there's no sugar in it. Lovely work by Dana Small and colleagues showing that if you drink Diet Coke while eating food, because you're not getting the sugar you're promised, your body then wants to store fat more because it's sort of down on the deal. So you'll actually retain, your insulin levels will go up, you'll retain more of the carbohydrate and fats out of the food. So those people who think, I'm having a Big Mac, I better have a Diet Coke, bad move. You'll get fatter. So it's actually one of the only true things that Donald Trump said. He said, those people who drink Diet Coke, it makes them fat. It's true. It's true. Even out of the mouths of babes and idiots, come true. Okay. So, let's think of what liking is. Liking, nice thing said by Peter Diane, liking based on sensory pleasure is the first and adjustable draft of wanting. You try something, and then you might think, I like that, and then you might go on having more and more and more. But we've also seen with coffee and alcohol that you can start by wanting and liking comes later. Okay. So let's also look at how we drive that wanting behavior. What creates interest in foods? What makes foods interesting, delicious, surprising? What also creates the emotional connection we have with foods? Well, let's go back to our friends Greg's, but let's get there. You see advertising like this. Maybe have a cereal bar just after you finished your workout. So you're feeling good. You're feeling, I've done something. I need a reward. I'm in a great place, and you have enormous amount of emotion charged up from that experience, and it's easy for those emotions to be transferred onto the food, and then to start to feel emotionally very connected to the food and to want it in occasions when you haven't done the workout. Take our old friend Greg's. They do something called mood-based marketing. So they look like neutral actors. We create this stuff, we wish we could do better, but, here we are. They talk about in their advertising that Greg's is an emergency emotional support. They have a slogan that says, oh, I wasn't sad, I just needed a Greg's. Wow. A Greg's sausage roll? Why did I just buy one? That's not neutral. A katsu curry a day keeps the worries away. My goodness. They also, I don't know whether they still have, but they had an app where you could get Greg's delivered. And on the advertising on the app, it said, the front door is nearer than the oven door. So they're not neutral. They're not neutral in this space. I think many people in Greg's think they want to change and up their game. And I know there are people inside trying to change this a little. But notice that companies will try to create those emotional dependencies. But really, it's sensory expectations that are driving food choice much more than just the taste of it. It's when you look at the things available to you today, you'll look and you'll pick with your eyes. We eat first with our eyes. And then there's the smell, there's the sound of the food, all sorts of things. Look, that's not as nice as that, right? Do you want a lot of beige food? Probably not. And companies know that. Sound is also important. When you've got Pringles and they say, once you pop, you can't stop. That's just like saying they're addictive. I mean, it's right there in the advert. And I know there are nicer words like addiction, like moreish. Nice. But really they want you to go on eating. And it's true, you ever seen a half-finished tube of Pringles in a hotel? No. I mean, just they open them. Now ripping open the tube and also making the sounds as you tip the tube and you get the sounds coming out, that's all part of the marketing. I did some work. They were a very fun team, I have to tell you, with these guys. And they said, one time they said, maybe we're going to make the tube bigger so you can get your whole hand in there. I said, no, don't do that. People like to be like foraging bears. They like to kind of try and get their hand in. They tip the tube up. They hear how many are left. That's all part of it. It's all part of it. Coca Cola spend an awful lot of time and money and research on getting exactly the right sound for their ring pull. There's a click, tear. Because after the click and tear, there's the glug, 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 ah. Now, if you give them the right cues to begin with, your brain's ready for the next one, and it's wanting those. The sound, that's sonic branding. There's a lot of sonic branding. The noise that the lid of a Snapple makes when it comes off, it has a suction noise. They trademarked that. That's the sound of Snapple. Kit Kat was one of the earliest sensory brandings, the snap of a Kit Kat. And I was talking to Kellogg when I went out to Battle Creek, Michigan, lovely place. And they were saying to me, we're really interested in sonic branding. Tell us more about that. I said, you started this. Snap, crackle, and pop. Remember, you put your ear to you were the pioneers. But the problem is, with all that branding, all that marketing, all that driving of our wanting and our desire to eat things and attaching emotions to them and choosing that brand again and again and thinking I must have this, we've got a problem of both health and sustainability. Now, for many of us, all of the people here, eating is pleasurable, sociable, but not for everyone. It's incredible that the Western half of the world is suffering from an obesity crisis and other people can't eat. Beyond that, we cannot, even in the West, sustain our agriculture to produce this food. Massive...
To continue watching this video, click the link in the top left or in the description below.
With a free trial, you can enjoy the full talk and thousands more.
Thank you for being part of the conversation.